in regarding to your femininity is in order to understand why it is so rare to encounter a truly alive and vibrant woman. And I think in the book, they describe a woman in a lot of different ways, but ways I wouldn't necessarily would think are feminine coming to my mind at first. So they describe her as a warrior, authentic, redeemed,
that's one of the chapters,
real.
right?
Yeah.
Something about the warrior.
Yeah, warrior princess.
Warrior princess.
Yes, not
Okay.
not Xena the warrior princess, but your day to day.
I've got antenna television, so I think Xena the warrior princess is like one of the 10 channel shows that I get to watch. It's like
I
from
never
the
had
70s
the
or
pleasure.
something.
I never had the pleasure of seeing Xena the warrior princess.
So, welcome to Generation Giants podcast. My name is Kyle, and I'm here with two of my great friends, Christine Bortner and Kat Delre, two of the lovely young ladies in my Seacoast small group. And today we're going to be talking about the book Captivating. So, I just had the pleasure of talking with two of our guys, including your fiance, Juan.
Yep.
And by the time this podcast comes out, that podcast would have come out, so go check it out. And we talked about Wild at Heart. And so this book, Captivating, is written by Wild at Heart's author's wife, Stasi Eldredge. Stasi, S-T-A-S-S-I.
Yes,
Right.
not to be confused with Stasi.
Yes, because it looks like Stasi.
Stasi.
But John does write this book as well. They co-wrote it
They
together.
co-wrote it.
Yes.
Gosh, Stasi just sounds like European. That sounds really...
Yes, there's a
Flamboyant.
famous reality star named Stasi, so that is the first thing that came to our minds.
Y'all thought
when
Stasi
we
wrote
saw
the book?
thing.
I didn't, but I think that...
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
I'm not
neither
the
of
only
us
one that
did.
watches
Oh, I know
reality
that. I know
TV.
this author.
No.
So we just studied these two books, and so my understanding, the little bit of understanding is from at the end of our small group studies. We would usually do about 20 minutes where we would learn from each other from the book Captivating and Wild at Heart. So how did you girls love the study from just talking about it amongst yourselves? How'd it go?
I thought it was great. It really encouraged some of the girls to be more vulnerable and to think in ways maybe they haven't before, to look at God's plan for women and for them individually. And we had a lot of great conversations. A lot of great stories came out of it. I'm sure Kat might share some of her story. So it was really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. I feel like this is the first the first book that we've read together that we got a lot deeper than we usually do, which was really nice. I'm sure for the guys as well. But it was really impactful. It's rare that I find so much in one book that I had so much to talk about. So it was really good.
Yeah. That's awesome. And before we even chose it, we had other ideas for a study too. And Christine, you actually suggested Captivating Wild at Heart. So it's awesome. And then you led the study for us. So thank you for that, and we all appreciate that. It was awesome, and we had questions prepared in advance, and we just all had a really great time. And I know, Kat, so interesting, you had mentioned actually you at first weren't as excited for the book, and then you became really excited, right?
Well, no, what happened was I had a different idea to do for our next study, and it wasn't that I wasn't excited about this one. I just had my own idea, and I was excited to do it, and then it didn't get picked, and it ended up this book meaning so much more to me than I think what my study might have. I mean, who knows? But
right.
I had a really good realization while reading this book, and that wouldn't have happened if my study was chosen. So God is funny sometimes.
Yeah, it all kind of worked out.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you could still throw in that other idea because it sounded like an awesome.
Yeah.
The other study you were going
it was
to do.
Andy Stanley, one of Andy Stanley's studies. So who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe next time.
Andy Stanley's solid. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we even talked about toward the end of the Wild at Heart study that before doing this study, a little while back, we did the new rules for love, sex, and dating, which was a good one that we suggested. So, So this book is primarily for women, maybe for young women. I don't know. Do you guys see a certain age for this book being most applicable or not applicable at all? What do you girls think?
I think it, once you're a teenager would be a good time to think about reading this book, but it doesn't stop being applicable once you grow out of that age. I know there are things in this book that my mom and I were able to talk about that relate to her life.
That's really cool.
A married woman, 2 grown children, like completely different stage in life. I'm mid-20s, newly engaged, and I think teenagers going through high school, college students experiencing a lot of different things. Like you can, every woman, depending, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can find something relatable in this book.
Great.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I know reading it for me, I definitely wished I had heard it sooner. So just piggybacking off what she said, the sooner the better. Obviously, pick it up whenever you can. But there was things that I read in here I wish I knew in high school.
Sure.
So, and I found that I felt similarly about the Andy Stanley study we did, the Love, Sex, and Dating one. So,
right.
While I think any woman could probably benefit, I would say the earlier the better.
Yeah, I like it. And so the book's called Captivating. I could try to guess from our discussions what the thesis of the book was, but could y'all kind of share what you drew from the book? And it sounds like you're ready. What would y'all say kind of some of those main points of the book are?
Yeah, so there's 3 major themes in the book Captivating, and it's the 3 things that every woman's heart longs for. One is to be romanced, the other is to play an irreplaceable role in a great adventure, and the third is to unveil beauty. Now, some chapters, you dig into these themes a little bit more heavily than others. But it was really, and this is all laid out in the first chapter. So it was amazing for me. I was actually listening to the audio version of this book while I was driving back from Tennessee. And so Stacy and her husband read it to you. And as they were talking about this on the audio version, it was like something clicked. So I knew that these are 3 things I had always longed for, but maybe I wasn't able to put them into the words that they were able to. And it was really, really cool. And I don't know if we're going to dig into these 3 topics a little more in depth later on.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I think, for all women, things that you long for, and maybe you realize 1 or 2 of them, or maybe you knew all of them or none of them, but
yeah. Do you feel like it helped click because it was this married couple that's, been established as a husband and wife for a while? What kind of do you think helped make it click?
Yeah. So Stacy in particular gave stories from her life that related to each of these things. So maybe situations where she was able to be part of an adventure. So she and John were out canoeing in the evening with their 2 young boys, and it started to get dark and they needed to get back to shore. And John was also relying on Stacy to help guide this canoe back to safety, which sounds simple, but when you think about it, afterwards, Stacy felt amazing once they got to shore, and she was trying to think, why do I feel so good? This is such a little thing in the scheme of life, but it's because she was part of the adventure, and she was part of like the heroic character. But it wasn't just her. It was her and John together.
Sure.
And then the romance part, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be romanced, so that wasn't shocking, but she had a lot of great stories about that as well.
Right.
And then when it talked about unveiling beauty, they really related that to God's plan for women, and a lot about Eve and her initial beauty. And I feel like sometimes in our culture, like, we think of beauty as only being physical, or like women feel external. A lot of pressure to feel beautiful. And is beauty a certain weight? Is it a certain size? Is it a hair color? Is it makeup? Is it all natural? This really, really drew on what God's plan for a woman's beauty is.
That's really good. Yeah, well, let's maybe talk about that, at least as a guy's perspective. I mean, there's definitely things that don't get voiced in culture. Like, to me, as a guy, a good attitude is really attractive. You know what I mean? Or a heart to serve others. Having a nature that loves others. To me, and I just got on Instagram just because of this
Yes,
podcast.
Kyle, yes.
Yes. Well, it's not a personal Instagram, so you'll never. Well, you will find it, but you'll never find a personal one. But even going on Instagram, there's all these young ladies that want to be like Instagram models, I think, and even talking to some, and it's like, to me as a guy, I'm not looking for an Instagram model, for a wife or something. You know what I mean? Like if I found someone who fit other awesome criteria on character and all that, and she happened to be an Instagram model, maybe that'd be a bonus, but honestly, it'd just kind of be like under the water. At least to me, I would, going along this marriage line, I would want my future wife to at least be pursuing some kind of passion. If she's passionate about being an Instagram model, maybe that's cool. I don't know. It's not something that is my passion, but I want, as a guy, someone who is passionate, living out their passion, loving others. That's really important. That doesn't get voiced in culture enough, because a lot of culture is media, which it's not being in their presence. It's seeing pictures or seeing videos or whatever. So yeah, obviously people are attracted to what they see, which is not the whole token. So
yeah, for sure. And I think talking about beauty, the word femininity really kind of goes hand in hand with that in this book. And I don't think I really knew what femininity meant. I think the word feminism would always come up. And I kind of entered this study with a bad attitude, because my friend was like, who's a very big feminist. She was like, "Oh, the book is okay. I don't disagree with I don't agree with everything, but we could talk about it when you're done." And she kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I have to disagree, just because of the way I experienced it. The word femininity has never been so relatable and honestly just cool after reading this book. I put down a lot of notes I had about how they describe femininity in the book, and some of the best stuff I wrote was, let's see here.
You got some awesome notes there.
I know. Well,
definitely feel empowered. Like whenever you need to talk about them, don't ask for my cue.
Well, honestly, I don't think I would have done this much if I didn't feel so passionately about how much good is in here, and I didn't want to miss anything. So one of the words, one of the passages said that to be a woman and to be beautiful is, and to in regarding to your femininity, is in order to understand why it is so rare to encounter a truly alive and vibrant woman. And I think in the book they describe a woman in a lot of different ways, but ways I wouldn't necessarily would think are feminine coming to my mind at first. So they describe her as a warrior, authentic, redeemed,
that's one of the chapters,
real.
right?
Yeah.
Something about the warrior.
Yeah, warrior princess.
Warrior princess.
Yes, not
Okay.
not Xena the warrior princess, but your day to day.
I've got antenna television, so I think Xena the Warrior Princess is like one of the 10 channel shows that I get to watch. It's like
I
from
never
the
had
70s
the
or
pleasure.
something.
I never had the pleasure of seeing Xena the warrior princess. But let's see, what else had I liked? Going along with our inner and external beauty, they talk about how true beauty comes from the inner part of us, our hearts, a heart at rest. And it's nice reading this because I think both Christine and I have both related to feeling like a heart at rest is not what we're normally accustomed to doing or what a woman is accustomed to doing. I feel like typically we're always striving, and through the book it talks about how femininity is being able to exude a sense of calm, a sense of rest, and invites others around them to rest as well. And that's just something that I never realized I wanted until reading this, and how important it is to sometimes just not be striving constantly, not be a human doing, but be a human being.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really important. And I remember us talking about that together one of the weeks, and Christine as our host, I remember you saying something about, you want to have a home that's calm, I think was one of the kind of phrases you might have said.
Yeah. There. I don't know where the passage is.
Well,
so
I can probably.
I won't look it up. But I did relate that to our small group. I host us every Monday night, but I also host a lot of our parties and our fun activities outside of just Bible study.
Got an oyster roast, potluck, white elephant, all in
Holiday
one.
jamboree.
All in one, coming soon.
Yes. And I find that I spend most of those times cleaning up after people and making sure everyone has enough to drink and enough to eat. And is the music too loud? Is it too quiet? Do we need to turn the TV on? I'm constantly making sure that everyone's having a good time without actually spending quality time with the people that I have over. And relating that back to the book of striving, I was able to relate that I don't need to be taking care of everyone and making sure they're having a good time. If I'm opening my home and offering my heart and having great conversations, the good times will follow because everyone will, feel at rest, feel calm, feel welcomed, instead of me pestering them the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do a great job hosting, and we all appreciate that. And there's something there too about being hospitable and being willing to be hospitable. And I think that's really a really good asset for people to have.
Well, thank you.
So
I love it.
Yes, we all agree. We all agree. Christine's the best host.
So how about a broad overview of the chapters? If you wanted to, you could even, again, name all the chapters or some of them that resonated with you. Maybe, again, broad overview of the content.
I personally, I kind of like, they all go around what Christina talked about, the 3 essential things a woman wants. I had wrote down some of my favorite chapters, some of the ones that I related to the most. The first chapter I wrote down that was one of my favorites is the chapter A Special Hatred, which
I saw that title, yes.
Which sounds...
Briefly expand upon A Special Hatred.
Which sounds like an odd place to start, but...
Yeah, it's like chapter 2 or something like that.
I know. This is chapter 5. So,
okay.
And there's a lot of good before chapter 5, but this one I thought was interesting.
You got all kind of stuff highlighted and underlined.
I know.
That's super.
I know. You can borrow my book when you're done.
Oh, yeah, whenever I read through the book, and I just learn from y'all.
Yes. So in this book, in this chapter, they talk about how Satan has a very specific hate for Eve. And it's something that I never really thought about, and why he would hate Eve so much. And I had never seen it written this way, and it was put in the way that said, Satan fell because of his beauty. Now his heart for revenge is to assault beauty. He destroys it in the natural world wherever he can. Most especially, he hates Eve because she's captivating, uniquely glorious, and he cannot be. He hates it with a jealousy we can only imagine. The evil one also hates Eve because she gives life. Women give birth, not men. And essentially, Satan's goal is to bring death to everything he touches, and women nourish life.
Right.
And it was just an interesting thing to read, because it says here, and thus Eve is his greatest human threat, for she brings life. And I thought that was cool because I think that Satan is I've never really thought about Satan before I read this book too much. That's just a personal thing. But to read this and read that Satan is going after our relationships and women personally because he has this special hatred for us, I just thought it was such an interesting perspective to see. And it goes deeper into, we have these struggles and we have these attacks on our hearts because of how Satan wants to be a threat to us and kind of derail us. And
right.
Because we're a major threat to, as it says here, the kingdom of darkness, because we carry the glory of God to the world. That's why he tries to thwart us so much. That's why sometimes we struggle, and we have problems in our day-to-day life. And I remember reading this, we were like, well, it's not really fun to hear at the time. That's why I'm struggling so much. But yeah, it was just an interesting chapter for me to read on that perspective. I had never really heard that put that way before.
Yeah. So in other words, the enemy tries to attack women or use women for his purposes because of their value.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I'm hearing.
Right. But yeah, so that was one chapter that I had never really experienced before reading this kind of idea.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Christine?
Yeah, and then further in the book, it talks about spiritual warfare. And I don't know what chapter that is because I'm not as prepared as Kat is.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a big point. And spiritual warfare, because we're about to take our break, spiritual warfare, to me, broadly defining it, is an attack on your identity. Was identity did you feel like identity was a big part of this book, or how do you feel about that connection there?
Yeah, I think that the whole theme of the book is your identity is found in being a daughter of Christ, and there's certain things that go along with being a daughter and not a son. Mm-hmm. So it definitely relates back to your identity and being saved by Jesus through his blood, but also what comes along with that in terms of like a female perspective.
Right. Yeah. Let's go. Let's then continue that conversation after the break. We'll be back in a minute. I like us touching on spiritual warfare because that's, as young adults, that's a big part of the conversation of our life, trying to overcome attacks on who we are and not letting things like failure define us as a person. You know, one thing that sticks in my mind is failure tells you what didn't work. It doesn't tell you who you are. Mm-hmm. So whether it's failure or whether it's someone said something to you in regards to how you look or how you performed or whatever, spiritual warfare tries to make that more than just a comment. It really digs into who you are. So this book speaks a lot to it that seemed to resonate with y'all. So what else would y'all like to add in regards to spiritual warfare?
Yeah, well, I like what you said about failure as well. Failure typically happens in a role that you're playing. Failure doesn't define your identity. Mm-hmm. And I know we just talked about identity being in Christ, and a lot of times when people experience failure, they start to relate that back to their identity, and they lose mm-hmm. self-esteem, and they lose focus on who they are. But failure has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the spiritual warfare that we were talking about, there is a part of the book where Stacy talks about turning to her husband, John, for support in prayer. She was dealing with depression and anxiety, which we know so many Americans are struggling with. And mm-hmm. I think Kat's going to talk about this a little bit more as well. But it wasn't enough for her to deal with it on her own. She needed a partner. And her husband, John, it says, I prayed, John is my husband, my head as well. We commanded the foul spirit to leave me by the authority given to believers in Jesus Christ. Deliverance came, victory, release, healing, restoration. It was a final key. I needed to address all aspects to find healing, my body, soul, and spirit, in order to come fully into healing. And healing, she's talking about depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I think that the spiritual warfare aspect is one that we so often forget about in terms of all of our struggles in life, whether it's health, mental health, failure. The devil is attacking us, and mm-hmm. we have the authority to banish him in God's name. And it's important to have partners, whether it's your husband in this situation or close friends, small group members, to have those prayer warriors that you can turn to for help is really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, and speaking of what she said here, she needed to address all three aspects: her body, soul, and spirit. So spirit is so often forgotten, but I feel like the body part is so often stigmatized in the church. So that pretty much touches on how, you know, we are of the Lord and our spirit is of the Lord, but we're given this body right now, and our body can be affected by a lot of different things, like the depression. I know for me, I've been affected by depression since I was a sophomore in high school. And she talks here about how she started going to counseling. This is Stacy. She started going to counseling. She made great progress, and they finally hit a wall. And her counselor was like, I think it's time that we try doing something with medication. And she woke up one day and she said, she was like, is this what people feel like all the time? And she was like, I could now move forward with God into deeper realms of my heart. The sky became blue. Life was no longer altogether too much. And I think that, and it even says it here, antidepressants are stigmatized in the church. Some call them happy pills. Others say that if you are filled with the Holy Spirit and walking with God in faith, you will not need them. And And then it also says there's no shame in needing to take medication, whether it is to help in a short, difficult period of your life or for the bulk of your life. And I just thought this was so great to read. For me, I always felt so much shame, and this book talks about shame and how women carry shame, but I always felt so much shame needing these medications. And I used to think if I was just closer to God, focused more on my relationship with him, I would be better, and I just wasn't good enough. But it's just so nice for her to share this experience about how she went forward with Christian counseling. They hit a wall, and she addressed her body. Her body was something, and like me, chemical imbalance, which is totally normal. She addressed that chemical imbalance with medication. And it says here, by seeking healing through counseling, God was addressing my soul. God's provision of antidepressants was a tremendous help to my body. I made real progress, but it was not enough. God wanted to engage my spirit, which is where she turned to John. But I think those three aspects are important, and there shouldn't be such a stigma for something that is so helpful. When she said, like, the sky is blue, like, it couldn't be more true. Like, you actually notice and you feel alive and you wake up feeling like, is this how I'm supposed to feel? I could talk about it for a much longer time, but I just think it's so important, especially for younger girls and guys who might struggle with that stigma. How medication is a thing of this world that God helped be a part of. And it only brings us closer to him to explore body, soul, and spirit, all aspects.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think one takeaway is people that will listen or watch the video on YouTube. I mean, they're going to see all, and I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, those girls struggle with things, or those girls have had problems in the past with depression or anxiety. But y'all are testaments that, you do get attacked, but there is life at the other end. I mean, y'all are huge assets in our small group, and y'all speak such amazing things. Y'all encourage other girls in the group, other guys. And it's a testament that even if you do go through struggles when you're a sophomore in high school or whatever age, that there is life at the other side. Maybe it does take medication to get through it. I've had plenty of medical issues in my day. So don't feel shame from medication or maybe even a procedure. Maybe even you need, I don't know. You shouldn't be shamed though for it. It's just part of the lot that you've been given. And it can make you stronger, because definitely going through a procedure or taking medication, going to the doctor, it's not easy. But in fact, taking the initiative to help fix yourself probably takes more strength than just trying to get through it on your own because you're ashamed of telling somebody, right?
Yeah, definitely. So
that's key. That's good. I like that. Was there other notes you wrote along any of those lines, or anything else you want to share there?
Yeah. I think that obviously that portion was important, but if we're talking about advice and encouragement for people who are younger and, going through the initial stages of opening their heart up and their lives, the part in the book, it's haunted by a question. This chapter in my book, it's page 58. It talks about where you go to God, where you go instead of going to God. You have an ache in your heart, and, most people have heard this, that can be filled by nothing but God. So you're going to have a part of yourself that you try to fill with lots of different things. Here it talks about spending too much money, gambling, binging, purging, shopping, drinking, working, cleaning. And we can try and fill ourselves with all those things. And we indulge in all of those things, but it never dulls the ache within us until we find God. And it says we need not be ashamed that our hearts ache, that we need and thirst and hunger for much more. And God made us that way. And the substitutes will never, ever resolve the deep issue in our souls. So I love this part because it talks about the nightmare of addiction for people, which can start at such a young age. People think of addiction, they think of someone doing hard drugs, but there's so many aspects to addiction.
Right.
I've struggled with my eating disorder since I was a little girl, and that was an addiction for me. And it says here, our indulgences make us feel better for a while and they seem to work, but they actually only increase our need to indulge again. And that's the nightmare of addiction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I there's a part in this book, I'm not sure where, but it talks about how God will actually thwart you in your efforts until you come to him.
Excuse me, can you please define thwart?
Thwart.
Can you spell it first?
I think it's THWART.
We said fort a lot in
Actually,
in
I wrote it
with the
down.
guys podcast.
Actually, I
maybe
did write
we
it
meant
down.
to say thwart.
He will
How
thwart-
did you use the term fort?
Fort building.
Fort.
Yeah, talk about building forts and all that
I
stuff.
definitely wrote the word down because I was like, I'm.
We didn't build thwarts. We built
Thwart
forts.
is the word.
thwart.
I
yeah.
just, for, anyone listening to this who may not be familiar with
Oh,
that
okay,
term,
yeah.
I thought maybe we
Thwart,
could
thwart.
define.
So he will
Let's see how many people we
derail
drive
our
crazy.
efforts. He will completely get in your way.
Some people haven't taken the SAT that are going to listen to this, so
Well, they're learning a new word.
this is educational.
So God is going to derail your efforts until you find rest in Him and you go back to Him. Here it is. God thwarts you. 97.
It's been revealed.
Haha. This is why
You have copious notes there. I just want to say.
Okay. So, the core reason we wrote this book, to let you know that the healing of your feminine heart is available and to help you find that healing. Why did God curse Eve with loneliness and heartache? He did it to save her. So God has to thwart her. In love, he attempts to block her wounding and aching. She turns to him alone for her rescue. She will chase after her lovers but not catch them. She will look for them but not find them. Hosea 2, 6-7. Jesus has to thwart us too. And I think it's, if I look in the areas of my life where I've struggled, I tried everything because my goal in life was always just to be happy. And I tried everything I could to be happy. And it didn't happen until I turned back to God. And I know that now, looking at this, in my opinion, he was derailing my efforts for happiness until I found happiness in him. And I firmly and totally believe it.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for happiness in other things, it's just not gonna happen.
You're right. So in filling that need, that desire for your identity in Christ, for turning to God, maybe practically, does that mean you have to join a small group? Does that mean, like our church is non-denominational? Like, is there a certain denomination? Maybe none of that even matters, but maybe for y'all, what do y'all think that means for the young lady out there who is trying to fill some kind of needs and she hears, well, I need to turn to God? Does that mean a certain set of practical steps, or is it almost like an idea, like turning to faith? What do y'all see that being?
Yeah. I think there are practical steps you can take when you're turning to God or looking to Him to fill a void, but everyone has different pathways. I know we just had a sermon about this at Seacoast a few weeks ago, and I can't say for everyone that means you need to join a small group and you need to start going to this specific church and worshiping in this way, because that's not realistic. Some people would rather go on a group hike than be in a small group, including
girls, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
including girls.
We actually just started doing like a girls hike.
I know. I found out about it too
Seacoast.
late. I really want to do it next year.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's a big hit with guys, and maybe the girls won't get just as big. I have no idea, but I think they took maybe like 30 or 50. I don't know what the number was. Pretty good number though.
Yeah. I think a practical first step when trying to accomplish this would, for any young girls, realizing like, when is it that you feel loneliness or find that you're not feeling fulfilled in what you're doing? Is it when you're turning to boys that are your age, or you're turning to parties, or whatever it is that you're struggling with or trying to find fulfillment in, popularity? Gosh, I don't even know what all high schoolers deal with today. I have a girls' small group of 10th graders, and they surprise me every day.
Yeah.
But I think in those situations, when you find yourself lonely, insecure, unfulfilled, that you make the first step of looking to God, praying out for Him, opening your Bible, whatever. If it is joining a small group, but surrounding yourself with the right people and looking to His Word and asking Him for help and filling that void, because if you keep going to the parties, you keep hanging out with the boys, you keep doing whatever it is you're doing, you're going to keep finding that loneliness at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I feel like the first step and the times that I have my biggest breakthroughs or have had my biggest breakthroughs are when I actually acknowledge, and I talk about it as like a wound. Like every girl has a wound from their childhood or even maybe from teenage years, is addressing the grief in your heart. And in the chapter Healing the Wound, which I actually didn't even realize it was called that until looking at it, it talks about letting yourself feel again. And for so long in my life, I was like, emotions are bad, suppress your emotions, be strong. Like that was what I was fed my whole life, appearance and performance. And I love this chapter where it talks about letting yourself feel. It says here, part of the reason women are so tired is because we are spending so much energy trying to keep it together, so much energy devoted to suppressing the pain and keeping a good appearance. Grief, dear sisters, is good. Grief helps heal our hearts. Let the tears come. Allow yourself to feel again. There is no emotion you can bring up that Jesus can't handle. Grief is a form of validation. It says the wound mattered. It mattered. You mattered. Let the tears come. And it talks about every little girl. There's a little girl inside of us. There's unwept tears in there. And the first step to going to God is to mourn for that wound, is to mourn for whatever hurt you. And I think letting God be the one who comforts you through it. But the biggest breakthroughs I've had, and I'm a crier, but I mean, it's the truth, is when I've actually literally broke down and addressed the sadness inside of me and let God be the one to bring me out of it. So, girls who, I don't know, I looked at this book and I was like, I didn't relate with the beauty to unveil. I didn't relate with that. And maybe you think, I don't relate to that. I don't have something that hurts me. I went into rehab 2.5 years ago thinking I didn't have any trauma in my life. And I was wrong. There's just things inside of us that we've thought were normal that aren't.
Yeah.
And it's God who's going to help us through them. So that's a part that I thought was really important. Emotions are good.
Right. And it kind of goes back to like, what is strength? Is it simply ignoring emotions, or is it kind of dealing with them, getting help from your parents if they're people that you trust, and hopefully they are, or maybe it's getting into some kind of community. Many churches around the country, at least here in the U.S., offer great youth programs to get involved with other people your age. And it doesn't have to be youth like 18 and under. Like we have a young adult program that we're a part of. It used to be more of a college program, and so college there's always something that you can try to get plugged in and make steps to help find help. And all of us need help.
Yeah.
All of us need some kind of help and encouragement.
And Kyle, you invited me to go to the student ministry, which Christine had been serving in a while.
Y'all are tag teaming right now, right? Are
Yeah.
y'all doing the same class, same grade?
Yeah, we just got officially
Killing it.
partnered together to...
Any young ladies in the Charleston area, come to Seacoast Church if you were in what grade? 10th grade?
10th grade.
10th grade.
We've got a
Boom.
lot of spots available in our group. But
Y'all have unlimited capacity.
the reason I brought it up is because the past 2 or 3 weeks, the messages in those student messages have hit me so hard and like have been so impactful and so meaningful, just seeing how it's affected the kids and then seeing how it reminds me of me. Like Christine and I will joke, like this is, we're here for the kids and we're over here crying, like having our own breakthroughs.
So if you want to come cry with us.
Yeah. I know, I'm
lead
sorry.
a revival.
I don't wear mascara anymore. I just don't do it because I just want to cry. But yeah, so you there's always somewhere that you can go to get more involved, especially at Seacoast. I mean, they have a program for everybody. They have classes and they have worship for everybody, and it's so cool. I would have loved it if I was a kid in Seacoast.
Yeah, actually this afternoon we've got the one big night.
We sure do.
It's more like one big late afternoon.
I don't have any flannel.
Do you have flannel?
So I'm borrowing Christine's flannel.
Are you offering me flannel?
She
Well,
offered
I don't
me
think
flannel.
I have flannel your size.
It won't quite fit correctly.
I mean, I was hoping for like a scarf maybe.
I might be wearing some fake flannel, like plaid, that from a distance looks, that guy's wearing flannel. But I shaved my beard, so I don't know how to look like a lumberjack. I need to figure something out. Maybe. Do you have a toboggan? I don't know if I'm using that phrase correctly.
I thought a toboggan was like a sled.
No, that might be a toboggan.
That is a type of toboggan.
I hope there's one that you wear on your head, because that's how I'm using
I
this
think
word.
you're talking about a turban.
No, I'm not. No, that's a totally another.
That's what you put on your head.
Turban.
Anyway,
This is a Christian church.
let's focus.
Well, we're
So
coming.
we need to find Kyle a hat.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, I have plenty of beanies and stuff, but I was hoping for more of a lumberjack look. I could take some maple syrup jars, empty or full.
Why don't you just ask Brent
Yeah.
for some advice?
Yeah, Brent has plenty of.
It's got flannel.
Brent, one of our guests from last episode, he has plenty of flannel.
How much time do we have?
He just naturally. We're actually at our second break, so we'll go ahead and take our second break,
Great.
and then we'll be back in a minute. And so for this last part, what we're going to try to focus on more or less the most is chapter 11, which was titled An Irreplaceable Role, which I think is really important. Just me being a guy reading the titles, if I was a girl, I would want to know why am I irreplaceable? Like, why am I as valuable as this book claims to be? Because again, as we've said, and as I just see, a lot of young girls especially struggle with feeling valuable, which is frankly part of that's on guys. We need to do better too. But so Kat, you wanted to kind of share some parts about that.
Yeah.
As far as why they're irreplaceable.
Absolutely. So it says here, and it's chapter 12, by the way, Kyle.
It's
That's
chapter 12?
why you have to read the book.
Wait, what was 11? Oh, 11 was Warrior Princess.
There you go.
Okay, I'm going to know the table of contents by heart by the time this is over.
It says here, to live as an authentic, ransomed, and redeemed woman means to be real and present in this moment. And then it goes on to say that I think this is one of the coolest descriptions of a woman I've ever heard. It says, you are a woman, an image bearer of God, the crown of creation. You were chosen before time and space, and you are holy and dearly loved. You are sought after, pursued, romanced by the passionate desire of your fiance, Jesus. You are dangerous in your beauty and your life-giving power, and you are needed. I highlighted that whole section because I felt like it was such a powerful image of a woman. I had wrote down a couple words when the word femininity came to mind, or just women came to mind after reading this book and what they're saying we are as women. And I wrote down more than one or two words because you said one or two. I wrote down authentic, redeemed, real, present, warrior, beauty, alive, vibrant, glorious, fierce, victorious, and powerful.
Come on.
And I feel like all of those words, but then I also put in there like comfort and present and at rest. I also put those words in there as well. So
It's a good thing women are better at multitasking than men, because as a guy, I suggested, what are one or two words that come to mind? And then
No, I had too many.
You came out with like 20
I had too many.
awesome words.
But I feel like, and it says later in the chapter about how we don't want to take men's place. We want to take our place as women.
That's a good point.
And we're created differently and have different strengths and different weaknesses. And our irreplaceable role, and he talks about it in this chapter as well, is that we have been sent by the Trinity on behalf of love and relationships. And we need to fight for our relationships. It says, Eve is God's relational specialist, given to the world to keep relationships a priority. Men have a way of letting things slip. They'll go for months without checking on the health of their
Tell us more.
relationship. Years even. Our enemy despises relationships, hates love in any form, fears of its redemptive power. This is why God sent Eve. Women are needed to protect relationships. So that's a cool thing to see as an irreplaceable role that, and this book was co-wrote, Stasi and John, and, they said that women just have a way of keeping relationships a priority. Kyle, would you agree that sometimes men go months or years without checking in?
Yeah. Well, there's something about manhood that I don't know. We do have a tendency to either ignore things or hyper focus. Like I was kind of saying, making a joke about multitasking. We tend to hyper focus on things, and there's a lot to that question. But especially, I imagine myself as a married man in the future. And other married men have this happen. You focus on your job. You focus on just making sure all the bills are paid. You feel like this weight's on you, and it can be tough to also focus on these other things, which are frankly probably more important because you as a married man, you have this job, you pay the bills so that you can raise your family. But you accidentally, in focusing on the means, you forget about the why. So it is a challenge, and I agree.
Yeah.
That was probably a longer explanation than you wanted. But.
No, it's fine. And it says here you have an irreplaceable role in your relationships. And it talks about how don't you feel like your relationships often feel opposed. And it says, of course they do. They must be fought for. Satan knew that to take out Adam, all he had to do was take out Eve. It worked rather well, and he has not abandoned this basic plan ever since. So the reason our relationships are thwarted is because the devil's the one thwarting him. I'm so sorry. It's a new vocabulary word I can't keep out of my day-to-day.
Rephrase that to derail in the future.
Okay, I will work on that. I'll pray about it. So it talks about your relationships being opposed, and of course they are because Satan's the one opposing them. But our role is to fight for them. And because he's trying to remove the partner you have in your life and the power that comes from that.
And I think this is especially important for young people because when you are in high school, in college, all of the time, relationships are almost how you define yourself. What group of friends do you have? What parties are you getting invited to? What are you doing on the weekends with those people? Are they talking about you behind your back? Are they being good friends? You tend to base a lot of your identity on these relationships. And again, I'm not preaching identity in this, but it seems to keep coming up. Your identity is not in your relationships.
Right.
But God is using relationships, especially for women. And it's important that when you're at that age where you want to be friends with everyone, you want to be well known, that you're fighting for the relationships that matter. They're not saying that a woman's purpose is to fight for every relationship, but it is important to fight for the relationships that God wants you to have, for the people that support you, care about you. That doesn't have to be 30 people in your class. It can be 2 really good friends or your parents or mentors
right.
or people in your small group. It's important to fight for the relationships that matter. And I think as women, sometimes we think we have to fight for all relationships because we want everyone to like us and we want to be there for all of our friends. So just clarifying that.
Yeah. And I imagine that you're maybe thinking of this passage when you say that. But it says here that studies reveal that most friendships undergo a transition every 5 years. People change, people grow. At least we want to. That said, though sharing a part of a person's journey is wonderful, it doesn't mean that we will share all of their journey, nor are they ours. Most friendships are for a reason. Jesus understands that friends may disappoint, yet he continues to love. But you can only have 1, 2, maybe 3 intimate friends in your life at any given time. That's just the way of the heart. You can't you can't possibly sustain intimacy with everyone. That said, you also don't want to have intimacy with everyone. Jesus desires it with us, and he understands he needs it with others. He made us that way, but it doesn't have to be with everybody. I think that's a mistake I've made for
Yeah, I know in high school I wanted to be friends with everyone. And I spent so much energy trying to support all of the girls in my class, whether I played sports with them or we were in a study group or we did go to the same church or fill in the blank how I knew these people. I spread myself super thin, and now it's 10 years later. I'm really not friends with anyone from high school because I didn't invest the time in those specific meaningful relationships.
Yeah, there's something so good to that I think about a lot. Just you have to appreciate those close people in your life because they may not always be there, and that's both a scary thing, but also something to help drive you to be more graceful. You know, to appreciate what you have now. Because I've even said that on other episodes. Like from high school, I see maybe 2 or 3 people from high school like maybe once a year, like at Thanksgiving. But that's not to say you should just not try to have friends in high school. Just recognize that there's a place for them. They'll remember you probably forever, but you probably won't actually be close friends forever. It's just how life works. People go to college or get jobs or stuff happens, right?
Yeah, and as a younger woman, I didn't realize that at all. Like, my heart broke when I lost friendships. Like, because you just imagine they're there for life, and that's not what God has in mind.
BFFs.
But he has in mind being, with you for the rest of your life. But these people are, probably temporary. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And frankly, everything's temporary to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like everything that you think is permanent. So there's something so good in that. And as a guy small group leader, even the guys, they have, it's friends. Friends are kind of the root, at least in high school, of so many stresses and anxieties and challenges. So I think this is so important to hit on that you have a critical role in people's life, whether you're a man or a woman. I'm mainly talking about women here today, but don't wrap your identity in them being there, because they're just not going to be there forever. Even your parents, they're just not going to probably be there forever, but you have to play your part in showing love to them, and hopefully they reciprocate it. Your parents probably are. Your parents are probably doing that. Friends may not, though.
Yeah.
So-called friend, and even if they are your best friends, they'll still let you down sometimes.
People will always let you down, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But not Jesus.
No, wrapping it back to Jesus.
But going back to that initial quote that Kat read from the book, when it talks about a woman's irreplaceable role, yes, part of that is relationships, and that's something that we're just called to. It also says, you were chosen before time and space, and you are holy and dearly loved. You are sought after, pursued, romanced.
I see you stress that R word there, and then now you're taking a long pause. Now you're taking a really long pause.
Because I couldn't read. The passionate desire of your fiance, Jesus. And when Kat and I read this, really there's a whole chapter based on the romance between a woman and the Lord. It was kind of like new territory for us. So I have a heavenly fiance, Jesus. I also have a human fiance, Juan, who I think you guys
I was going to
met.
ask you, you're not married, you're not engaged to Jesus, but maybe speak more.
I am cheating.
So speak a little bit more to that point that the author writes, fiance to Jesus, because as a guy, that's not how I think about Jesus. I want to be more of his friend. And maybe that's wrong, but I don't think it's wrong for me. I just don't think of him as a fiance. So I'm curious, how do you see that? How do you feel about that point?
Yeah. Well, going back to the very first thing I said, what the book is about, captivating, we said one of the three things that women long for is a great romance. And I was like, great, I already knew that. I love romance. Like, I love having...
Favorite movies, The Notebook, The Notebook 2, and The Notebook 3.
And yes, future notebooks to come. No. But I always loved the idea of a man fighting for me. And not like I'm a damsel in distress and I'm not capable of living life on my own or doing things on my own. But I liked the idea of someone fighting for me, seeing in me a value that was so great they couldn't live their life without me. And Juan did a great job of doing that. I'll just give a shout out to him now.
Hallelujah.
But in the book, we realized that's what God is doing for us. Oh, Kat's getting excited. It says this doesn't need to wait for a man, is what the book says. So your romance, it doesn't have to wait for a human. God's pursuing you.
Yeah, many women love dogs.
Well, okay. Yes, well, Kat can talk about loving dogs.
Yes, too many doggos. Kat Delre story.
Side note,
work
Kat
at a vet
works
place.
at a vet. Yes.
It's not just you're trapping up dozens of dogs.
There's a whole chapter on romanced, and they talk about Jesus as being a lover to women. And I remember reading that and being like, what now? And because it's like, it's not something you're used to hearing.
Right.
But I gave it a chance because it says here, we all long for romance. We are wired for it. It's what makes our hearts come alive. And it doesn't need to wait for a man. And it says that a woman becomes beautiful when she knows she's loved. Cut off from love, rejected, no one pursuing her, something in a woman wilts like a flower that no one waters anymore. A heart becomes alive, comes to the surface, and becomes radiant, which makes me think of that one, my favorite quote these days, which is, those who will look to him are radiant, their faces shall never be ashamed. Psalm 34:5. I love that quote. And I think that, and whenever I read that and whenever I see that, I think of my friend Kate. She's the one who initially brought me back to church. And she radiated love and beauty. And, I asked her what she had that I didn't. And she said, Jesus. Like, it was so simple. And I think of her every time I see that quote. And a woman loved by Jesus is like that. And then from there, you become just more radiant in your everyday life. And it says here, if you'll open your heart up to the possibility, you'll find that God has been wooing you ever since you were a little girl. And that goes into talk about like nature, memories. His version of like chocolates and candlelight is sunsets and falling stars and moonlight lakes, swaying trees. And God's been romancing us with everything around us from since we were born.
Yeah.
And when you look at it that way, that's really cool. Like, I'm one of those people that, like, they talked about this in the message a couple weeks ago, like when you're out on a beach or if you're looking at the stars or where you have, like, your soul has room to breathe, like, that's where you feel so connected with God. And he's romancing you in those moments.
Yeah, I really like that. I was actually I take walks around here maybe at least once a week. And last night it was just a clear sky. And yeah, even as a guy, I don't think about it in quite the same terms, but I definitely, we were talking about pathways early in the episode. I definitely have a pathway of feeling closer to God through nature. And so I was looking up and such a clear sky, and it definitely makes you feel beauty in the universe. Like you've been given a gift. Our surroundings don't have to be this way. And so I think that's a cool point that even guys can kind of relate to in some kind of way.
And that's essentially what Wild at Heart focuses on, that,
Yeah.
getting in touch with your heart sometimes leads you outside.
Yeah.
Into the wild, right?
Get off the Xboxes.
Yes.
Or the Nintendos.
Yeah, we
I
talking about
really love
earlier
Nintendo.
One of the props in today's service was an NES. You were there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the NES.
I think I cheered.
To which Kat definitely verbally and maybe physically cheered.
Yeah, I may have given a pump.
And then she continued to very in a low voice talk about her love of up to N64.
Yeah, I stopped at
off.
N64. I stopped where perfection happened in the gaming world, and I called it a day.
These young bucks just don't even know about the old systems.
Yes.
And like an idiot, I sold my N64.
Oh my God, your bill was so
to GameStop, and they got all my games and the system for like $150.
Robbed.
It was like 30 games.
I can't relate to this at all. So
Oh, sorry. So sorry.
Well, we'll just have our own little moment about video games. Well, that's phenomenal. So, and we're going to begin to be wrapping up. So, irreplaceable role. Love all the content there. Value. Is there anything else then that you would describe that role then? Because as a guy, and you mentioned feminism early in the show, and this may be rough terrain to get into, but whenever you get into talking about women and you get into the roles, to me, that's just not even a good it's just bad. But this book, the word role is in the title of the chapter. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it talks about, it probably doesn't mention things that, it probably doesn't mention laundry and dishes, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Probably doesn't.
Well.
Okay, maybe it does. So how could you maybe put it in layman's terms of that irreplaceable role then? Because I love that you mentioned women don't want to fill men's role. They want to fill women's role.
Yeah.
That's so important. So maybe speak to that in maybe even layman's terms.
Yeah.
That a guy could understand.
So I think in everyday words, broad overview, a woman's role, like you said, is not to be a man, but it's to be a woman. So it is to have those meaningful relationships, to pour into those. It talks about giving life. So physically, women give life. Maybe if you're 16, you're not giving life. But to give life through your words is part of what being a woman is. And it talks about being part of a great adventure. You can do that with a man, and you're not trying to take their role, but you're becoming a partner in that story, that adventure. And romance, it's being romanced by God, also being romanced by the right men, and romancing God back. Part of being a woman is, I think, pouring into God everything he pours into you. So if you want a guy to text you in the morning when he wakes up, like, God wants you to talk to him in the morning and thank him for the new day. I think if you start living your life romancing God the way you would want a boy to romance you, that's going to help your relationship grow too.
I like that.
That's really cool. And in terms of the irreplaceable role, I did forget about one part that they wrote, and it said that women have been essential to every great move of God upon this earth. And John in the book says, I wanted to say nearly every great move, not wanting to overstate a crucial point. But Stacy chimed in and said, those men had mothers, didn't they? And it quickly dawned on him that it was his mother who, is what made him be the man that he is. So he said, I conceded women have been essential in every great movement of God, which is great, which is so cool.
Right.
And because I was talking before about how Eve, we kind of have like a stigma with Eve, how she was the one who ate the fruit and then gave it to Adam. And like, I would feel shame about that and be like, oh, it was a woman who did that. But I mean, when you look at it this way, it's telling us that women have been essential to everything that God has done. And I think diving into what you had said before about dishes and stuff, this isn't exactly what
I did say those words,
but this is what I thought of. This was just like wild to me, this passage here. And it talks about all the different roles you can be called to do. And it says, God called Carol to the high position of mothering. And she was like number one in school, number one in all of her classes, had great education, family, opportunity. And she got pregnant, with her husband, and she had hopes and desires to pursue more education, do more, run her own business, run her own company. And then she had a little boy, and she said learning to mother her child required more of her heart and soul than she thought possible. And she was called to the high position of mothering. And it says here, she is choosing to die 1,000 small deaths to herself every single day, while at the same time falling ever more in love with her son. Carol chose to say yes to God and followed his lead into the hidden life of a stay-at-home mom. God is meeting her there. And it says she's playing the most irreplaceable, essential, powerful, and life-impacting role imaginable. Which is wild to me to say that, she thought her path was to be this great businesswoman and have so much success in that world. And instead she is choosing to do what God is telling her to do. And it's changing her life in a way that she never thought possible. So it doesn't have to do with dishes. This makes it sound a lot better. I want you to think about that every time you think about the dishes.
But part of playing an irreplaceable role is playing the role that God has called you to. And once you keep building your relationship with him and hear him speak clearly and let him guide your decisions and your life, your role could change. Could be something completely different than you imagined, and that's
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Well, we basically have to begin wrapping up. I wish we could keep going. There's so much that I can learn here. But we'll kind of close down then with just final thoughts. And anything else then that you want to add to kind of sum up some of those big points that you got from, or just something you want to speak into some of those listeners?
I believe there's a part in the book about women being queens.
Yes, that's very true.
And I think we could end with that.
That's a good idea.
So, Kat, if you could find that
I tried before, and for some reason,
Is queens kind of synonymous with bro, but in the opposite sense?
So there was this great moment during the girls' breakout time in small group about how it talks about women, and gosh, I wish I highlighted it. It was so good. But essentially, I really want to read it verbatim, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find it.
We'll see if we can find it and maybe include it in overtime.
Great. But essentially it says that, like, you know, God is a king, and essentially, like, the woman that you are meant to be is a woman who is sitting right next to Jesus, and, you know, your role is being queen to his king. And, like, it talks about how we're all essentially queens. And it's funny because I was like, oh, it all makes sense. Like, I would call I would call my friends queens every day in everyday life. Like, yes, you're such a queen, like, queen girl. And I was like, see, Jesus had the plan. He had the plan for us all to be queens. This is why.
Queens.
Yes, I was like, this is why I say queens all the time.
Ladies get it.
I love the yas part.
Yes.
Do you kind of wave like a pinky or a hand in the air?
I have a nice hand motion that goes with it. It's not necessary. But
I really love waving, like the Princess Diary waves.
Well, that's not how she did it. She did thank you for being here today.
No, it was Princess Diary 2 then. I don't know. It was somewhere in there. Did you see all of them?
Sure did.
Well, I stand by my statement.
Yeah, we'll watch it later.
Again, I can't relate.
But yeah, the last thing to end on can be Yas Queen, but I had put one thing. No, we had talked about it all already. So.
Well, I just want to say y'all have
done a great job.
Just cut it. No, y'all. Well, I appreciate y'all really coming on and speaking to all those the things you highlighted. Y'all broke out a lot of content from the book. So it'll be interesting. Like, we'll get to even hear like the guys' version, the girls' version, and stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear the guys' version.
We probably cracked the book open a few times because I don't know.
Whoops.
Probably because most of us audiobooked it. But so that's awesome that y'all had the underlinings and getting to quote from John and Stacy's wisdom, and I'm just glad that we all got to do this study and we got to learn from each other. So like I said, we could probably talk for hours about this, but appreciate y'all, and love that. Be irreplaceable, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Be irreplaceable. So thank y'all again. Thank you for speaking life into students, encouraging others to think bigger and dream wider. So appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
you.
Kyle.
We were meant to live for so much more. Have we lost ourselves? Somewhere we live inside.
Well, it talks.
It says,
about,
like, you will be a queen of Jesus, and I was like, I knew I felt like
yes,
a queen.
queens.
We are queens.
I'm a queen.
We're all queens. We knew there was
You're
a
a
reason.
queen.
I was like, I call everybody a queen.
Before you walked in, we asked Alexa if she knew who wrote the book Captivating.
And she said, Robin Hood was a heroic hero. Like,
Started talking about Robin Hood.
Fair.
Children's novel written by author L. Frank Baum and illustrated by W. W. Denslow. Originally
Nope. You're wrong.